You won't believe the powerful themes and amazing irony that we discovered today in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. And it's one of the most famous, most classic Victorian novels. So one of the things that we're going to get out of the way right away is the title. Frankenstein refers to the scientist, not the monster. So the scientist is Victor Frankenstein, and the monster that he creates never gets a name. So one of the interesting things about the novel is that we can kind of discuss who is the protagonist and who is the villain. The novel has several themes, and one of the themes is definitely the consequences of playing God by trying to dominate nature. The other major theme is societal rejection, and finally, what does it mean to be a monster? So Frankenstein is interesting because it's written like a story within a story. You know, like those Russian dolls where you there's a bunch of them nested. It's kind of like that. And we get a series of letters, 4 letters to be exact. And they're by a guy called Robert Walton, and he's an explorer writing to his sister. These letters establish the mood right away. He's in the North Pole. So they establish this mood of a completely lonely, desolate, miserable landscape. And it also establishes the theme of single-minded, obsessive idealism and ambition. Letters 2 and 3 kind of just expand on the same things. And in letter 4 is when something actually happens. They see this huge guy on a sled with dogs running by, and they don't know who that is. And then after that, his crew rescues a different person also on a sled passing by, except this dude is almost dying. And they pull him on to their boat, their ship, whatever. And this is Victor Frankenstein. So Victor Frankenstein becomes friends with Robert Walton. He's basically telling him hey, what are you doing out here? And then he starts telling him his story. And there's an interesting detail here where when Robert Walton is telling Victor Frankenstein what his goal is and why he's out there, Victor Frankenstein immediately warns him, do not do this. Do not be obsessive about your goals. Do not be obsessive about trying to dominate nature and seeking knowledge and success above all things. That's a bad route to take. And then he tells him why he's saying that, which is the story that we're about to get into. So now we're going to go another layer in. This is now Victor telling Robert a story. We start out in chapter 1 with Victor's childhood, and he has a perfect childhood. His parents are super wealthy. There's no fighting in the house. They have him, of course, and then they adopt a little girl who becomes part of the family, and she's raised like a cousin. I propose that Mary Shelley created some parallels here to the Garden of Eden because of the extremely idealistic setting. This is before all knowledge, before exploring the world. He even gets a little Eve to keep him company. And then in chapter 2, we meet his actual best friend. His name is Henry. And again, super idealistic, the best friend anyone could ever have. Elizabeth and Henry are presented like perfect people. Anyway, in chapter 3, the mother of the family dies and Victor goes to college. He's sitting in some science classes and he's like, oh my God, look at the discoveries that people have made. I'm going to do something bigger than that. I'm going to do something bigger than anybody has ever done. He wants to play God. So, getting A's is not enough. He wants to change the world. In chapter 4, he's moving on with his studies and he gets really interested in anatomy because he wants to find out what gives a piece of meat, just mass, what gives it the spark of life. And he tells us that he only believes in what he can see. A dead body is just material for an experiment. He doesn't have this sense of respect and reverence for a corpse. Hey, that was a person that died. Don't mutilate it, don't touch it, don't dismember it, don't dig up somebody for a personal science project. He doesn't have that sense of respect. So cemeteries, morgues, torturing animals, all of that is fair game because it's just material for an experiment. Anyways, after doing enough of all of that, he figures out how to animate an inanimate mass. And he's really excited about it. Remember what I said about like drawing parallels to the Garden of Eden? In the Garden of Eden, you have this perfect setting, you have these super happy people, right? And then the problem is when they eat from the tree of, not of everlasting life, it's the tree of knowledge that they eat from, and everything just goes south. At this point, he has eaten from the tree of knowledge, he figured out how to do something that he wasn't supposed to do, and his life just goes down the drain. Yes, you're smart and you're learning all of these things, but that doesn't mean that you can like handle the information responsibly. So at this point, we see him start working, and it's not fast, it takes several years. But this is a cool thing. We see him transform. Remember that theme that I mentioned in the beginning of the video where like you have that question of what is a monster? You're seeing Victor Frankenstein transforming into something he wasn't before. We started out with the lack of respect for human life, or with the lack of foresight, and now we're seeing him physically transform. Emotionally, he's not feeling anything. He doesn't even care or feel bad, and physically, he's looking pretty rough. Okay, he's not sleeping, he's not eating, he has bags under his eyes, it's not a good look. He's kind of becoming a monster himself. So he doesn't care about friends. He doesn't care about family. He doesn't care about the bodies that he's disturbing. He doesn't care about the animals that he's torturing. He is obsessed with this goal that he has. And there's something in him that tells him this is some sort of crime. Like, duh, hello, yeah. He's kind of become a slave to this urge. And as intelligent as he is, he's not thinking. He's not thinking of how this is going to affect other people. He's not thinking of how this is going to affect the world. He's not thinking of what this is doing to him psychologically. And he's definitely not thinking about good and evil. Chapter 5 is amazing because chapter 5 is when we actually get to meet the creature. I think it sucks that he never gave him a name, and that tells you a lot about, again, that lack of respect for life. He doesn't care about the person that he's creating. He says in this chapter, he actually tried to pick attractive body parts. When he was dismembering rotting corpses, he was like, let me pick nice pieces and make this creature attractive from the rotting corpses that you're using. How? I don't understand, because gross. But whatever. He's like, oh, I'm gonna make him attractive. Now, once the creature actually like starts moving and waking up, Victor's like, oh, wait a minute, you're ugly. I don't want you anymore. And he abandons him there. He has worked on this for years. At no point has he cared about good and evil. At no point has he cared about breaking the law. At no point has he cared about the fact that he's ignoring all his human relationships. He doesn't care about like how this is going to affect other people, or what the hell is he going to do with this person. What, is he going to live in your house? Or are you going to adopt him? Or what are you going to do with this person? None of this matters. Okay? None of this ever stopped him before. The only thing that is now a problem is that the monster is unattractive. Have you ever met a really smart person who's also really dumb? That's Victor Frankenstein. And he goes to like his apartment where he lives, and he's like, I need to lay down. And then guess who shows up? The creature looking for his dad. Okay? This 8-foot tall baby, rotting corpse baby. And Victor flips out and abandons him again. I don't know. Deadbeat dad much? I think so. He runs, and at this point he's run away twice. We're seeing the consequences of that unchecked ambition to play God. Nothing much happens in chapter 6. He gets letters from his family saying that everything is wonderful, life is perfect. And what Victor does is just kind of distract himself by spending time with his best friend Henry, and he just kind of conveniently forgets that he has this person just, walking around. Like, what happened to that guy? I don't know. We're just not going to think about it. He's just having fun hanging out with his best friend. Chapter 7 is big. Victor gets a letter from his family saying that his little brother, and I mean little, he's like a little kid, William, has been killed. William was out playing in a field. Somebody kidnapped him, strangled him, and stole a really valuable locket. And of course, Victor heads home to be with his family. And he goes to the spot where they have told him that little William was killed. And he sees the monster. And he's like, ah, this is the guy. This is the killer. He found out where my family lives and he killed my little brother. Oh my God. But here's the thing. At no point does he tell anybody. Everybody decides that a house servant called Justine is the murderer because she was found with a little locket in her pocket. Frankenstein knows very well that it was not Justine, that it was a monster that he created, but he doesn't say anything. He lets it happen. And Justine goes to trial for this murder, and she is hanged. And he says all kinds of things. Oh, he feels so guilty, he feels so bad, but at the end of the day, he doesn't say anything. He lets her die. And about Justine, he says, the tortures of the accused did not equal mine. So he's like, yeah, she died for a crime that she didn't commit as a child murderer, but still, it was worse for me. Can you imagine? So that's why I keep saying that you really have to consider the irony of who is the monster. Victor decides that he's going to go out and spend some time in nature. And guess who he finds there? He finds the monster. And the monster starts talking to him. And it is such an interesting confrontation. So there are several things that are huge here. First of all, the monster can talk and can express complex ideas. He can reason. He can try to mediate, and he can try to negotiate. He's intelligent. He uses logic to convince Victor of the things that he wants from him. The monster even tells Victor, and this is super ironic, that he needs to have self-control and control his impulses. So you have the monster, okay, who's treated almost, just like an animal, right? Telling this wealthy, college-educated scientist, hey, you should probably get a hold of yourself. You should probably get those emotions in check. It's amazing. And he has a better understanding of morals than Frankenstein does, because he talks to him about the obligations that a creator, a father, has to a son. Check out this quote. He says, remember, I am thy creature. I ought to be thy Adam. I was benevolent and good. Misery made me a fiend. Make me happy, and I shall again be virtuous. It is in your power to recompense me. You accuse me of murder, yet you would, with a satisfied conscience, destroy your own creature. I mean, the monster could be a lawyer. And Victor actually says that this is the first time that he feels any sense of responsibility as a creator for what he created. So in chapter 11, the monster starts filling us in, and he tells us that when he woke up on that table, it was like a baby. He was just kind of getting used to his senses. He ends up walking around, and he talks about how scared he was, how he sat down and cried because he was so alone and he didn't know how to talk and he couldn't ask for help. In his innocence, finds a village and he tries to approach people for help, but they physically attack him as soon as they see him because of the way he looks. And so he goes to the woods and he hides, and he finds a little hut that has like a little wooden shed on the side of it, and he hides in there. This hut belongs to a little family, and he spends more than a year just observing this family. It becomes a whole education for him because he learns what a family is. He listens to them, and he actually learns how to talk. He actually learns how to read. He starts doing chores for them, like cutting up wood and like leaving it outside their door in the middle of the night. He wants nothing more than to be part of a family. And he wants to be good. He talks about how important it is for him to be a good person. Not only is he capable of giving love, but he's also capable of having a conscience. For example, he notices that they don't have a lot of money, they don't have a lot of food, so he stops stealing their food. And he says, I'm only going to live on berries. But when he tries to approach them, it all falls apart. They get scared. They attack him. This fantasy that he had of actually belonging to a family that he truly loves is shattered, and his heartbreak turns into rage. He suffers so much during his travels. Like when he gets to Geneva, he explains that he is so tired of being mistreated and he's so lonely that he sees a little boy playing in a field. This is William. And he reasons, if I can basically kidnap this little kid. Okay, he doesn't use the word kidnap, but that's what it is. If I can take this little child and raise him to be my companion, just to, like, we're going to be a little family, just you and me, right? He's so young that they haven't like taught him to treat people badly based on looks, so I'll have a little family. But when he approaches William, not only does William start screaming, right, because he's scared, but he starts telling him, my dad Frankenstein is going to find you and he's going to kill you and he's doing all these horrible things to you. You're such a monster, whatever. And this little kid is berating him. And his emotional reaction is to take this kid and he just wants to make him stop talking. And that's why he strangles him. In that moment, when he realizes that this is Victor's family member, he wants to hurt Victor the way that he's been hurt. Later on, when he sees Justine, the servant, sleeping in a barn, he puts the locket in her pocket. He goes from being this childlike, innocent, benevolent, kind person who is lonely and scared and just needs love to being hurt and angry and bitter, and he becomes violent because of the way that he's been treated. So he finally gets to the end of his story and he tells Victor, here's what I want from you. I want you to make me a companion and I will never kill anybody again. We're going to go off and we're going to be by ourselves. We're not going to bother anybody. I just want a companion because I'm so lonely. On one hand, this is Victor's chance to fix things. Supply him with at least one of his needs. On the other hand, he doesn't know what will be the personality or the nature of this new being that he would create. So he finally ends up agreeing, like just to kind of like get the monster off his back. He's like, fine, right? But he doesn't do it. Eventually the monster shows up to kind of like check on him. And he's like, you know what? Forget it. I'm not doing this for you. And the monster tells him, I'm going to be with you on your wedding night. And Victor understands, oh, he's going to kill me on my wedding night. Because you're not giving him a partner, why should you have a partner? Now, through a series of kind of weird events, turns out Henry's dead. Henry's been strangled. Big surprise. So at this point, 3 people have died. And so it's up to you to kind of decide who is responsible. Once Victor gets home, back to Geneva, he gets married, and on their wedding night, Victor's like, I know that this monster's coming to kill me tonight because he's not going to let me be happy. Like an idiot. He leaves Elizabeth in their bedroom, like laying down, and he's in this other room and he has guns and he's like, I'm ready for the fight. Whatever. I'm ready for this dude to show up and kill me. It's so stupid because as a reader, you know, did you just leave her alone in the other room? So of course, he hears a scream. He goes to the room. Elizabeth is dead. Big surprise, right? She's dead. The monster, who is intelligent, he doesn't want to kill Victor because that would end Victor's suffering. He's going to kill the people around him. So stupid, and it's so frustrating as a reader because you're like, oh my God, I totally know what's going to happen. This guy's an idiot. He's a genius, but he's an idiot. And in chapter 24, which is a super long chapter, but it's the last one, he goes to his family's cemetery and he's like, oh my God, I'm going to avenge your deaths. So now the chase is reversed. Instead of the monster chasing Frankenstein, now Frankenstein is chasing the monster, and they've become mirrors of each other. And this chase takes us to the beginning, telling the story to Robert Walton. And he's finally starting to take some responsibility over his role in how the creature has changed from when he was created to now. He's taking some responsibility, but not really. So he's like, yeah, I was responsible for at least thinking of his needs because I created him. But then he says, oh, my greater responsibility was to human beings because there was more suffering to be had there. But I think he's lying to himself because when we look throughout the text, that was never a reason for him to reject the monster. His reasons were always the monster's ugliness. And remember that when the monster asked for help, he almost helped him. And he says, yeah, but then I took a good look at him and he's so ugly, I just couldn't do it. It's not until is actually building the female that he says, oh, you know what? They're probably going to be horribly evil and they're going to have like little evil babies and this is going to be horrible for the world. And even then, he's basing these assumptions that he's making on how they look. What he's saying now at the end of chapter 24 sounds like a beautiful deathbed speech, but it's not truly authentic to what we've already seen in the first 23 chapters of the book. And what's even weirder is what happens when he dies. The monster shows up. But remember, his whole goal was to get revenge because he's so angry that Victor was unkind. And then as soon as Victor dies, he's like, oh my God, Victor, you're the best. This is the best man to have ever lived. He was such a wonderful man, and I was terrible. And he does this like beautiful eulogy for him. And honestly, as a reader, I have to say it feels out of character and it feels forced. It feels like the kind of speech that you would include at the end of the book to kind of wrap up the story in a really pretty bow. And this is how the book ends. He gives this whole speech, this whole explanation, and then he's gone. I really think that the ending could have been better. I think the book is great. I think it's awesome up until the end of chapter 24. At least we get the monster's final speech, which shows us this amazing ability for introspection and see, honestly, the tragedy that comes from not only the hubris of wanting to play God, but also what can happen to someone who is constantly abused and mistreated by society and not given a chance to be loved or to love anyone else. What can happen when you're obsessed with revenge? What responsibility, if any, do we have for the things that we create? And think about our world today, our society today with AI. We're creating beings, right? Are we responsible for what they do? Are we responsible for their needs? At what point do we start behaving like machines for the sake of our own sense of accomplishment, our own need to feel like gods? I want to hear from you. What were your favorite parts of the book? And what are some of the other novels that you would like to see analyzed in the channel? Remember that literature is always about interacting with the text and also interacting with each other. So I would love to hear from you. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment, and I will see you next time.